Hey guys, it's Adam here. So this is going to be my first chess video on this channel. So yeah, it's been a while since I posted on this channel in general, but now we've moved on to just chess. So this will be chess content and maybe some other games. I'm going to test out some other games soon and I'm going to post them on this channel. So you've got to be very excited for that. At the moment, it's just chess. So this is the chess part of it. So this video basically is just going to be for the beginners. So anybody who's completely new to chess, so doesn't know anything about chess whatsoever, they just don't know anything, right? So if you do know something, if you're an intermediate player, then I'm really sorry, but this is just not for you. This is basically chess. So we've got a bunch of pieces here. We can click on them. We can do whatever we want. We can click. But we're not going to do that for now. We're just going to talk about the general board and pieces and stuff like that before we move on to any like tactics and all that stuff, because that's a bit more for the intermediate or advanced players. So here's what we've got. Right, we've got this. We got what is all this? This is why have we got all these numbers? Why have we got all these letters? Why is this here? Right. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then we've got the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. This is what you need to. This is basically, you don't need to really know the letters and the numbers here. This is just kind of like, it's a starting point. It's a reference point, if you will. So it's kind of like, it's helpful to know what kind of where exactly the pieces are, and this actually will come into later when I start talking about moves and stuff, and you'll see what happens over on my right here on this part. You'll see what happens when I start playing moves on this part that my mouse is on right now. So that is, these numbers basically are just symbolizing the ranks, right? So this is the first rank, the second rank, the third rank, the fourth rank, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth, right? Pretty simple. And then we've got the files, right? The files or the columns, but they're called files. We call them files. So the A file, the B file, the C file, the D file, E file, F file, G file, and so on, so on, right? So that's basically, so you have files and we have ranks, but we call this the back rank because it's just easier. It's the rank at the back of all these pawns. These are called pawns, by the way. So that's what they're called, pawns. That's the first thing you need to know. So basically, I'm going to start talking about the pieces now. So the pawns, like I said, right? So the pawns, right? Thing about pawns, they're kind of just, they can just move. You can see. So I have the legal moves on. So if you're new to chess, I would highly recommend turning this setting on for the legal moves. So you can see here, I can go 1 up or I can go 2 up with this pawn here. And if you want to know how to turn that on, just go to the website, chess.com. We're going to go to settings. We're going to go to gameplay, I think it is. And here we go. We got gameplay. We need to go to settings, gameplay, and then show legal moves. You want to turn that on. So that is basically how you turn it on. You just need to turn that on. It'll be very helpful if you did turn that on. So we're going to go back to what we were doing, which is this. Okay, so the pawns then, right? So yeah, so as you can see from the legal moves, they can move 1 up and they can move 2 up. So let's just move a random pawn on the side. We're going to move this one up 2. So as you can see, this is moved up 2. And as you can see to my right here, like I said earlier, when I play moves, I want you to pay attention to this. It says A4. What is A4? A4. So it's telling, it's saying the moves here. So this is called chess notation. So chess notation is basically how they notate moves in chess. So it's gone a4, so the pawn has gone from a2 to a4, and that's why it's called a4, because the pawn has gone to a4. It's just a4, nice and easy and simple. Starts off simple with the pawns, a4, this is a4, this is how you play a4, so this is a4. So if you were to play this in the real game, you'd say, oh, I just played a4. You can say that if you want, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, if you want to say I just played a4, you can say you just played a4. Although it's a terrible move, but I'll get to that later. But a4 then, right? So it's moved up 2, right? It's moved up 2. But if we go back for a minute, I can also move it up 1. I can also move it up 1. A3, right? A3. And it's interesting because what you see to your left here, this thing here, is the evaluation bar, right? And it tells the person who's winning, who's losing. So basically, who's winning now? Well, black's winning, right? They've got a 0.1 advantage, right? 0.1 is nothing. It is nothing, right? It may as well basically just say equal, right? This number up here, it says what like how much points they're up. So every piece has its own value. So these pawns have a value of 1. So that is what their value is 1. So we go back, and interesting here. If we go up 2 now, so you'd expect, okay, so we've just gone up 2, we can go up 2 again, right? So let's just move, I don't know, this one 2, then we'll go this one, and I can't move it 2 anymore. You'll notice I can't move that on up 2 anymore. It's only on the first move when you can move it up 2, right? And you have the option to move it up 2 or not. Because if you move it up 1, then again, it's 1, right? It's not 2 anymore. So this is the thing about pawns, right? So let's just say we moved a bunch of pawns. So we're going to move a bunch of pawns. We're going to go and we're going to take this. So as you can see here, I've just taken a pawn. This is how pawns capture. They capture sideways, diagonally, like this. Not sideways, not like that, but diagonally like that. That's how they capture. And as you can see from the evaluation bar, like I said, it's saying 1 because we just won a pawn. A pawn is worth 1 point. That's why it's saying 1. Now it can say other things as well, but this is basically just, it's 1, right? So it's just basically simple. If I capture a pawn, it's 1, basically 1 point for a pawn. So it's always worth just, if you see a pawn that's free, normally it's a good idea to take it. There are like poison pawns, but you don't really need to know about that right now. So okay, so that is all the pawns covered for now. I'm not going to talk about anything else for now. So then we have these back rank pieces, right? We have the rooks. These are called rooks, the side ones, the castles, you know, the rooks, the castles, whatever. I used to call them castles. I call them rooks because that's what all the professional chess players call them. They call them rooks. So we call them rooks. But you can call them castles, you can call them whatever you want. Just whatever's easier for you. If you just want to call them castles for now and then call them rooks later, then that's probably not even a bad idea. That's probably actually a good idea if you did that, just so you can remember like what kind of pieces there are. Okay, so here's what we're doing, right? So we've got the rooks then, right? The rooks. So these are called rooks, and we can notice that we can't move the rooks, right? We can't move the rooks right now. There's no moves for the rooks, right? There's no moves. You can't. Where's the moves? Like if I move this pawn, you can see the moves, but with the rook, you can't see the moves, and that's because this pawn is blocking the rook. So the rook can't go through the pawn, because if the rook could go through pawns, it would be able to go and capture capture that rook, right? If it was just going to go through the pawns, so whoever moved first would basically just capture the rook if the rook can go through pawns. But for now, let's just talk about this, right? So if we were to move this one up, let's just move that one, and then we've got this. So now we can see the rook moves. So we can see the rook moves up. So it can move up like this. We can go this, and then the rook can also move sideways. So it can also move sideways as well. So it can move sideways, right? It can move there, right? It can move anywhere sideways. It can move up and down, and it can move across as well. So up and down and then across, right? Up, down, across. Right. So that is the rooks. That's basically all we need to know about rooks. They just move up and down and side to side, and that's basically it. Let's talk about knights next, because that's the next piece along. So we'll talk about knights. So knights then. How is a knight different to a rook? So the knight can go through pawns. Like the pawns don't block the knight necessarily, except this one. This one will block the knight because this square is already taken by the pawn. So you can't take your own pawn as with the knight. So, but you can go over pawns. So the pawns don't block like the rook. So you can go like that. So you can just go over the pawns like this. You just go like that, and then that will be basically the move, right? That'll be the move. Yeah. So the knight's a very, very, very tricky piece to move. So it's in an L shape. So when I say an L shape, what do I mean by an L shape? So just count, right? 1 across and 1, 2 up. Or we can go 2 across and then 1 up. 2 across and then 1 up. Or 2 across and then 1 down. Because we can go backwards as well. That's very important. Pieces can go backwards, right? They can go back to where they started, right? It's not, it's not, you can only go forwards, that's it, you can go backwards. So if you ever need to retreat, let's just say, not this, but let's just say we just played some random move, that's really bad because that bishop can take. I'll talk about that in a minute. But let's just say they did this. So now the pawn is attacking the knight here. The pawn is attacking the knight because it can take the knight now. So if we just push this pawn, it can actually take the knight because it can capture diagonally, it captures like that. So if we're ever threatened, we don't have to go forwards. We can just go back to where we started. So let's just say all these squares were also covered and we couldn't go anywhere, because anywhere we go, we would lose the knight. But we can also go back. So we can go back. So that's very important, right? So we can go back. So this is basically how knights work, basically. So if we just go back to the beginning, right to the beginning. So we've got the knights here, right? The knights. And then we have the bishops, right? The bishops are also, like the knights, they're very important. Yeah, they can just go diagonally. That's basically it. Diagonally, that's it. Diagonally. That's all you need to know for the bishops. The bishops can only go diagonally. Anywhere diagonally. So diagonally, basically. Okay? So we just move some pieces like this. We can get the bishop out like this. This is called the London. You don't need to know that for now, but this is basically it, right? So it can move anywhere diagonally. So it's just on diagonals. That's basically it. All you need to know for the bishop. The bishop is nice and simple. I'd probably say the bishop is probably the simplest piece to remember how to move, because all the other ones are quite tricky, except for the rook maybe, but the bishop is definitely the simplest because it's going diagonals, right? So that's it basically for the bishops. Then we also have the only piece I haven't talked about is the queen, right? The most powerful piece, the queen, right? So the queen is the most powerful piece. So what does that mean? What does that mean? The queen is the most powerful. Well, the queen's most powerful because it can move anywhere, right? So if I just play some moves, some random moves, yeah, and then I just play some random moves, you can see it can move anywhere. You see all these legal moves, you see all of them. It can move anywhere. It can move diagonals, it can move back and forwards, it can go back, it can move anywhere, right? It can go anywhere. The only piece that it doesn't replicate is the knight. So it can't, the queen is not a knight, but yeah. So it's basically just a bishop and a rook combined. So that's what a queen is. It's basically just a bishop and a rook. But it is the most powerful piece because it can go to, look at how many squares it can go to. It can go to so many squares, and that's why it's the most powerful piece. So why do I say it's the most powerful piece? Because if it's the most powerful piece, then why is it not the most important piece? Well, the most important piece is different. The most important piece is the king. The most important piece is the king because if you lose the king, you lose the game. If you lose the queen, you don't lose the game. It's certainly bad if you lose the queen, don't lose the queen. But if you lose the queen, then, you know, you don't lose the game immediately. It's just you lose the queen. It's still probably quite bad, but you lose the queen. But what's more important than the queen? The king is. The king is the most important. The king is your target. This is what you need to be going for. This is what you need to try to attack. You need to try and get to the king, right? So what can the king do then? So the king is actually pretty useless, believe it or not, because this can only move one square. One square. You see how I said it's the most important piece? You see, look at this. 5.5. And black's only captured one pawn, but it's 5.5. This is why the king is important, right? So if we go back, so the two most important things in chess is material and king safety. So it's material and king safety. So it's how much material. So material is your pieces, right? Material is your pieces, right? These are your pieces, right? So this is your material, right? Your material here, right? Your material, right? Your material there. My arrows have just pointed out the material, right? This is the material. The king's safety is how safe the king is. Nobody's moved yet, so nobody's actually got to actually have to move the king yet, because it's kind of like, you don't really want to move the king in the opening. It's probably a very bad idea. If there's some cases where you have to move the king, then it's probably not good. It really isn't good if you have to move the king. If you have to move the king, then that's probably bad. That's probably really bad. So just try not to move the king. Just stick to what you have to do. So what do you have to do then? If you don't move the king, right? So I can't move the king because that's bad. So what do I do in the opening? What do I do? So what do you do in the opening? That's a good question, right? So you need to develop your minor pieces. You need to develop your bishops and your knights. Your bishops and your knights. Yeah, this is the bishop. This is the knight, right? So your bishops and your knights, right? You need to develop them, right? But which one comes first? The knight comes first. Why does the knight come first? Why is the knight first? Why can't I just go this and then get the rook out? Why does it have to be the knights and the bishops? Well, it just is, right? Not everything has a complicated answer, okay? So it's not like, it's not like you can just push the pawn and then why is this bad? Why is it saying 1.3? Why is this so terrible, right? You don't know, right? If I did something more principled and developed the knight, you can see we maintain the advantage here. We don't lose anything by doing this, right? We don't lose anything, right? Yeah, so that is basically it, right? So before you develop the knights, I would highly suggest you do a pawn move, right? So it's good to focus when you're on your opening, you need to play in the center of the board. So the center of the board is these 4 squares here. This is the center of the board. So this is the center of the board. The pawn can move to the center of the board. So I'd highly suggest this move. This is the move that I play almost every single time. Well, basically every single time that I play a chess game, I play this move. Or you have other options. You have this as well. So this is also a good option. And then you also have this. This is called the English opening, but you don't need to know that. And then you just have lots of openings, right? But what you don't want to do in the opening is move these side pawns, right? Because you want to focus on the center, right? So how does moving here get to here? It doesn't, right? It doesn't focus on this, right? It doesn't focus on that. So you don't want to be moving this pawn to there, because it doesn't do anything. Black can do whatever they want. Black can overwhelm you in the center. The center is very important. So I'll cover the center in another video. I'm going to wrap this video up now because it's getting a bit long. So what I'm going to do is that's basically it then, right? So we've done everything you need to know so far. We've done the pawns, the pieces. We've done everything that you would need to know about chess. And we haven't played many moves yet. I've just told you what to do as your first move. I'd say a pawn move in the center like this or this. But obviously there's other options, right? So there's lots of different options, but it's a good starting point that we start here for the beginners. So for the beginners, I'm kind of thinking we do another video for them after we've done the intermediate players. I'm going to do the intermediate players first because they're probably really sad right now that I haven't done a video for them. But this is basically it, right? This is it, right? So this is that's it. So that is going to wrap up the video, and I'll see you guys later in the next video for chess. And yeah, goodbye.